Hello, I'm Aluka, a 3D pen creator. Today, I'll be making the sword from the Minecraft movie using my 3D pen. Let's begin. To start building the sword, I begin with the blade. The blade is made up of multiple layers, the main part, a middle piece down that, and then a middle piece on top of that, stacked on top. This gives it depth and the look seen in the movie. I've always been a fan of Minecraft. When I was younger, I even had a Minecraft YouTube channel where I go online and play different games. So when I heard they were making a movie, I was curious, but I didn't think it would work. Then I found out that it was a live action instead of something similar to the Minecraft story mode, and yeah, the movie was absolutely horrible. I have no idea why they did that. I feel like it would have been more creative to go that route of a story mode, but the kids loved it, so I guess it worked out. Once the base of the blade was complete, I started filling it in. This is always a time-consuming step, but it's very important, and considering how many pieces I made, you would think I would have spent more time making the pieces than sanding them, but no, I spent way more time sanding this piece and I hated it. When filling with a 3D pen, I move in circles to avoid leaving gaps. A helpful tip is to hold the piece up to light, and if you see light passing through that area, it needs more filament. After filling in the back, I realized that this was still a little bit too thin, so I made another piece and put it on. And since it's also very thin, the only thing I need to do is heat it up with a lighter and stick it on and it will not come off. This was actually the perfect thickness and I'm happy that I decided to add the other piece on. Then it was on to making the rest of the blade sections. To stop myself from losing the piece, which is something that always happens, I decided to keep everything together, and that actually kept everything together. With everything filled in, the next step was smoothing, and for that I used my Clover mini iron. I've come to really appreciate this part of the process. Watching a rough surface gradually smooth out is satisfying, and I've improved so much. I went back and looked at my old projects and my smoothing was not as good. It's very nice to see where you came from. Whatever kind of art you do or whatever kind of sports you play or with anything that you do, you should compare yourself to yourself yesterday. Look at where you came from, look at where you learned, that'll help you a lot and make you want to continue to do it. After smoothing the first time, you will always see these holes appear where the filament didn't go all the way in, and it's a simple fix. You just add some more filament and go over it again. Over time, I learned how to properly smooth out 3D pen projects, whether it's this or sword or anything that I've made in the past. When I first started, I would smooth something out and it would leave a mess behind it, kind of like where you wipe a window, you wipe it and then it creates an infinite messes. I learned with the Clover mini iron, the best thing you can do is push it down really hard and slide it across so it kind of blends in both sides of the filament together. Once everything was nice and smooth, I used another copy of the template to align the pieces and cut off all the extra filament. This sword isn't perfect, and it's because all the pieces aren't the same thickness, which does create gaps and a little bit of ununiformity. I don't know if that's a word, but I said it. To fix this, I could have made a filament sheet, because when you take a bunch of filament, you put it in the oven and it all melts to the same thickness, or I could use the belt sander, but I don't have that to smooth out all the pieces to the same thickness. This sword turned out fine, but that's just something to keep in mind. After the final smoothing, all the pieces were ready and it was time to put it together, starting with the handle. I basically heated it up until it was literally on fire, then stuck it together hoping that the filament would melt it together and it would be able to hold up the weight of the sword because I had no other plan. That worked, so I ended up adding a rectangle piece down the middle. At this point I accidentally bumped the camera, so the rest of the build wasn't captured on screen, but from here it was just a matter of attaching all the pieces with the Clover mini iron and some smoothing. Now it's time to sand, and if you're curious why I didn't sand all the pieces before, it was simply because a lot of pieces were going to be stacked on top of each other, so it didn't make much sense to sand something that's just going to be covered up. The power tool handled most of the sanding, but I left a rough surface. To fix that, I followed it up with some hand sanding with the sandpaper stick. And for the smaller areas that the sandpaper stick can't reach, I ended up buying these really neat micro sanding sticks. I wasn't sure if this was going to make a big difference until I compared both sides. It did, so I did this with the whole entire thing. Now the sword right here looks amazing, and I could have painted it here, but it has some small imperfections that I wanted to fix, so I ended up adding a sandable primer. I used 320 and 120 grit sandpaper and wet sanded it twice, though I didn't put that in the video. Even after the primer, I noticed these really small imperfections that were kind of bothering me, so I went over it again with Guard Buddy.
2,000 years later.
Sanded everything down again, and you can just see how much stuff was filled in. Way more than what I thought. Next was painting, but before I started painting, I had to mask off everything that wasn't silver because I'll be using my airbrush. Next up was painting the brown handle brown. And then it was time to paint the sword yellow, and somehow I ended up mixing black paint into my yellow paint. I don't know if it was on purpose, but I just kind of went with it. But while I was looking for my black paint, I did end up finding my yellow paint and fixed it. Thank goodness. Speaking of black paint, I used my last bit of that and mixed it with the water to weather the sword and give it a worn look. Then I wiped away the excess paint with toilet tissue, just leaving behind enough to give it some texture. I mostly focused on the crevices and the edges. I did the exact same thing with the handle. And since the bottom of the sword is probably going to be the dirtiest part, I just left the black paint on here. I did not wipe any of it off. To add even more dirt, I mixed the black paint with the brown paint and added this on, and this is also something that I didn't wipe off. I just dabbed all over the sword. To give the handle a little bit more texture, I dabbed it really quickly all over it. And with that, the sword from the Minecraft movie was complete. Out of everything I made with the 3D pen, this is definitely one of my favorites. Even though some parts didn't line up perfectly, I'm really happy with how it turned out. Next up, I'll be making the alien from Toy Story. See you there.